Good afternoon, Year 3 and Year 4. I'm going to not be teaching this time. Today the work is going to be done by you. This is our last history lesson for 2 terms. We'll be moving on to geography next term. So today we're going to be looking at getting you to do the work. I want you to make connections between the history of Paddington and the present day Paddington. And we're going to do that in 3 steps. So I'm going to walk you through the process that you're going to go through, and you'll have some more time available, not just this afternoon like you normally have, but you will also have some extra time during the week to get all of this done. Okay, so our project is a key inquiry project, which means that we're looking for you to not just understand the concepts, but to be thinking through what the consequences of those are. So our questions today are, how has the Paddington community changed? What features have been lost and what features have been retained? What places in our community relate to historical people or events? Now, for you to be successful at this, you're going to need to show me that from the first European settlers in Paddington until now, you were able to identify 5 significant ways in which the features of Paddington have changed, and 5 significant ways in which the features of Paddington have stayed the same. I'll explain the features in a minute. Identify at least 10 local places that have links to historical people or events in Paddington, and what role the person or event played in changing Paddington. Okay, now that's a lot of words and it might sound a bit scary, but I'm going to walk us through what you need to do. The first question, what features of Paddington have changed since European settlement? Okay, now this is a broken down version of the page that you'll be looking at, and I'll show you that in a minute. Now, the features of a place may be the natural or the man-made or the managed environment, such as parks and beaches of Paddington. So what has changed since European settlement? What has changed since the Aboriginal people until what we have now? And quite going to need to have 5 of these filled in. I've given you more though, however, in case you can think of 5 more. Let's go and have a look. I'm going to show you what the piece of paper you'll be looking at actually looks like, so that you'll be able to see that what we're doing on our screen is the same as what you'll be doing on your screen. And here's the first page is what I've just read to you, what your task is and what the success criteria are. And here's what it will look like to you. All I've done is to take little bits out of this to put it into the Google Slides. So what features of Paddington have changed since European settlement? A feature of a place can be natural, man-made or managed environments such as parks and beaches. What is the feature? How has it changed? And then down the bottom, I've given you a couple of illustrations there to help jog your memory. Okay, I'm going to go back to our presentation now, but before I do, I'll just show you that the other pages that you'll be looking at, what features of Paddington have stayed the same since European settlement. And again, some images there to prompt your memory. And the last one is refer to the list of street names in Paddington, but you may include place names other than streets, such as beaches or parks. What places in our community relate to historical people or events? And down the bottom there is just a picture of our school. So I'm going to go back to our Google slide now, and so that I've shown you what to expect on the piece of paper. And what I've got in Google Slides is just a shortened down version of that. Okay, so a feature of Paddington that has changed since European settlement. All right, here's a picture of the reservoir gardens. Okay, so the feature would be water. Okay, so when Paddington was first settled, they used the creeks running down into Rushcutters Bay for their fresh water. but that started to run out. So then they needed to build a reservoir to bring the water across from the botany site. And then that used to be an underground water reservoir. It became a garage for a while for the Department of Main Roads. And after a while, the roof collapsed and it was left empty for quite a few years. And only quite recently, it has been transformed into what is the beautiful reservoir gardens now. So that is a feature of how it has changed over time. Let's go on to the next one and think about what features of Paddington have stayed the same since European settlement. And again, I've got some prompts here for you. There's a creek running down into Rushcutters Bay. And this one is a picture of Oxford Street. So in this one, the feature might be that we still have water running down into Rushcutters Bay. It doesn't do it like a river or a stream in this picture anymore, but it still runs down to Rushcutters Bay using drains. Okay, so we've still got water being channeled through the suburb, mostly underground. We know that part of the Glenmore Creek runs underneath Trumper Oval and through there, through pipes out into Rushcutters Bay. Another feature that has stayed the same since the Aboriginal time was that Oxford Street has been used as a place of transport. So the Aboriginal people first used it as a maroo when they used to walk from place to place. And over time, as we saw 2 weeks ago, it has grown, or 1 week ago, it has grown from what was an Aboriginal walking track into a very busy road. And so what has stayed the same is that it is still, Oxford Street is still used as a means of getting into and out of Sydney. Okay, and now to our final question. Refer to the list of street names in Paddington, but you may include place names other than streets, such as beaches or parks. What places in our community relate to historical people or events? Okay, so you're going to put the place name here, and what historical person or event did they relate to and how? So I'm going to share this, stop sharing the screen and go across to our list of Aboriginal place names and what that will look like for you. Okay, is here. Now this comes from the Board of Geographical Names, which is an actual place in the government that says for Paddington, these are all of the streets or lanes named in Paddington. Okay, now I'm not going to go through them all now. I'm just showing you this is a complete list for Paddington. It goes over 2 pages and that will be supplied with your work on Monday or whenever else you're doing the history. Okay, and now when I go back to our screen again, okay, I've got a shortened version of that I'm just going to show you now. Okay, so here's I've just made a shortened list of the different places in Paddington. It only goes down to Glenview Street. So if we have a look at these places, Albert Street and Albert Square, we haven't learned anything about those. Albion Avenue, Alexander Street, Elmer Street. Anzac Parade, you might be able to link Anzac Parade to some of the events that we know were happening in Paddington around the wartime. Okay, now I'm going to go to the next screen, which is a copy of this one, but has got, oh, sorry, no, it hasn't. Okay, so we've now got our next one, Barkham Avenue. What is the historical significance of a street called Barkham Avenue? Okay, now if you don't know, then I am going to attach in Google Classroom all of the Google slides that I've been teaching using the last 2 terms, right back to the first European settlement. We had 2 lessons on Aboriginal lifestyle, and then our 3rd lesson started the European settlement. So go back to those slides if you're not sure and see what connections you can make between something like Barkham Avenue and what Barkham was in our history. And if you just look through this small group of streets here, it only goes up to G. We've got another one here, Begg Lane. Okay, what's historical significance? What's the connection between Begg Lane and what we know about our history in Paddington? Here's another one, Boundary Street. This isn't one we spoke about at the time, but Boundary Street was named because it was the boundary between, and it still is the boundary between Paddington and Darlinghurst. If we keep going down, we have got Cascade Street. Everyone should know what the significance of calling Cascade Street was. And we've also got Cascade Lane there. Centennial Lane, that's not one we've talked about, but we have talked about Centennial Park and the significance of Centennial Park. And so you might be able to make that connection for yourself. Cooper Lane and Cooper Street. Who was Cooper? What is the historical significance of Cooper to Paddington? And why would we have streets and lanes named after him? Cow Lane we haven't discussed, but you could be fairly sure that knowing how the Paddington area was first used as grazing land for the early settlers, that there might have been a cow paddock involved somewhere around there. Duxford Lane and Duxford Street, that's one we've covered. And also Alfred Street. Now you know them as schoolhouse names, but we've also covered them in our history lessons as a part of the history of Paddington. So if you don't remember what that was, go back through the Google slides and find out what that was. Okay, our next one is Forbes Street. What was the significance of Forbes Street? Why would we have a street named after them? And of course, now we've got Glenmore Road and Glenview Street. So even on this very short version, I've asked you for 10 times, 10 instances that you can relate one of these street names or other places in Paddington, it might be a beach or a park, to a historical person or a historical event and explain what that connection is or what that historical significance was. So what you're going to do now, and you've got several days of about 40 minutes each day to do it, is to go through and answer those 3 different questions for our assignment, okay? What features of Paddington have changed since European settlement? And there are a lot. What features might have stayed the same? You'll need 5 of those. And for the next one, you'll need 10 place names, either streets or roads or beaches or parks. And what is the connection of that name to something that has happened in Paddington? Okay, everyone. Now this was our last lesson for the 2 terms on the Paddington history. I have before, and I would like to again acknowledge the source of a lot of my material has been from the Paddington Society's publication called Paddington, A History. It gives a very detailed retelling of Paddington's history, and I've used both the structure and the content of that in many parts of my lessons. Okay, that's the end of our unit for the 2 terms. I hope you found it interesting. I know I have. And next term, we'll be working on our more of our geography. Thank you.